You guys, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of time, and special thanks for Laura Halverson and Tri-Counties for hosting this Zoom meeting. We really do appreciate it. My name is Mike Potier. My company's Boardwalk Properties, and I'm one of the three local listing brokers. I'm joined with Caroline Gim, who will follow me with Expert Realty, and David Jervis with Coldwell Banker, who will bring up the tail end. We've been doing this a long time, and REO, we were just talking shop a little bit before we got started. It's real low right now. We're suffering, we're feeling the problems that came along with the COVID that hit, and the moratoriums that were put in place, which are now lifted, except for the eviction moratoriums, which is still in place in Los Angeles and Long Beach. But we're starting to see some activity, and that's good news. But inventory should start to pick up, and I think you're going to be blessed that you're ahead of the curve by taking this training right now. If you guys, there's a lot of information that the three of us are going to be presenting today. If you would please write any questions you have in the chat, and whoever's not speaking, we'll try to monitor those questions and answer them the best they can. We'll probably also have some time at the end to answer live questions. You can unmute yourself. If your question's not been answered, please, by all means, we want to make sure it gets answered before you get off this call today. Okay. So what is a HUD home? This is the 1 to 4 arena. It's the single family arena. And these properties are all listed at fair market value. There's appraisals done on these. They get a BPO and some other desktop valuation. It's no longer strictly off of appraised value, which it used to be years and years ago. These properties vary depending on location, condition, but you have to remember all these properties, regardless of the condition, are sold strictly as is. And we have to define really what that as is, because there can be no exception. There's no warranties, guarantees, or representations. The only repairs, if you want to call it that, is that the FSM, the field services manager, goes out and they make sure the property is safe, secure, and marketable. When I say safe, it's sometimes there's hazard areas that are identified. They'll tape off some areas that we don't want you going near. They might have unsafe flooring or something like that, but they are responsible to make sure these properties are able to be shown and sold in their current as-is condition. You guys the buyers are definitely allowed and encouraged to get your independent home inspections, because although there are some cursory inspections done, and we'll talk more about that in detail, they're nothing like a full independent physical inspection, which we encourage you to get, please. The buyers typically do not acquire any bills or liens on the property. So let's talk about who the participants are right now. There's a slew of people. At the top here is the HUD Ownership Center, and then underneath there is the MCM, the FSM, the asset manager, which is our client, and then local listing brokers, which is the three of us. And there's about 100 or so in the state of California. At least there was about 100. Maybe there's more than that now. The MCM happens to be ISN out of Oklahoma City, and they're ultimately responsible for everything. And they assign the tasks to all the below to comply with their responsibility. The FSM, there's the field service manager. There's one per state. In our state, in California, it's Guardian Asset Management. The FSM does the initial inspecting of the property and ongoing inspections. They secure the property. They perform any cosmetic enhancements or repairs. So they really aren't going to be doing much work to make cosmetic repairs as you may think of them, but they do typically detrash, clean up, just make the property as showable as they can in their current as-is condition. And they also do ongoing maintenance, yard work, etc. There's the asset manager, which since June of last year is now A-Team Realty. They handle all of California, Hawaii, Nevada, Idaho, and Arizona. And they're ultimately responsible to make sure that this whole sales process moves smoothly. They ensure that these properties are accurately priced. Their goal is to achieve the highest net for HUD, and that's truly how they accept a bid, is whoever's the highest net to HUD wins that bid. Their responsibility is to minimize property holding time. They review all purchase contracts. They oversee closing and accounting of funds, and they make sure that there's a high level of customer service and client satisfaction. Then there's the local listing brokers, the three of us and the rest throughout the state. And we do, we list the properties in the MLS. We make sure there's a sign in the yard. We do routine inspections and reports. We do PPOs and pricing advice. We handle customer service and training, like this event that we're putting on right now. We make sure that there's a wide market exposure on both the properties and the process, which is what we're doing now, to you as agents as well as to buyers. We get the earnest money check to the closing agent as soon as contracts are executed, and we provide these trainings. It says on a quarterly basis, but we do them about monthly. We'll jump into the sales process itself right now. Anybody can sell a property, but you probably want to get paid. And to get paid, you'll need to have your broker register for a NAID number. All a NAID stands for is name and address ID. But the brokerage is the one who is accountable and responsible, and that's who you'll register under. So once your broker has a NAID, then you register underneath that broker's NAID. We'll walk you through that process in just a little bit. So if the NAID package is sent to the, in our area, it's Santa Ana, you just got to make sure that your broker does this accurately. It's very important. It will delay the process. A complete package could take up to 6 to 8 weeks, and it must be renewed annually. If you don't renew it annually, you got to go through this process from scratch again. If you're just renewing annually, it's just a matter of minutes. It's just an easy process. But getting the package initially, or if you've let it expire, takes a little bit of time. So who can buy a HUD home? Virtually anyone. Make sure your phones are silenced, you guys. I'm taking a call right now that I didn't. I'm gonna hope it didn't ring. I thought I'd silenced that. But anyone can buy a HUD home, but buyers will fall into one of three categories: owner-occupants, investors, government agencies, and HUD-approved nonprofits are the three entities. The owner-occupants are given a priority bidding period. So whenever you see exclusive listing period, means it's owner-occupants only. The owner-occupant is agreeing that they're going to occupy the property for at least a year, and they cannot participate in the HUD sales for 2 years after that purchase. Investors are different. They have to wait till the property slides from exclusive into extended listing period. There's no restriction on the quantity of homes that an investor may purchase, but it's a different bidding cycle than owner-occupant. It must show extended. Extended means both owner-occupants and investors can be bidding on these properties. Let me go over some of the benefits of buying HUD homes. For owner-occupants, HUD has pre-agreed to pay up to 3% of your buyer's closing costs. You've got to put that in the contract, and when David pulls up the contract, you'll see there's a spot there to put in your dollar amount. If you put in 3 and think it's going to be 3%, you're asking HUD to pay a $3 credit. So be careful. You want to put in the full dollar amount. If it's a condo or a townhome, project approval is not required. That's huge. And agents don't know that. Since HUD requires these complexes be FHA approved, they also own the property. They can certainly waive their own requirements. So you don't need to panic when you find out that there's a 30 or 40% delinquency, HOA delinquency rate in the complex. You don't have to worry if there's a lawsuit going on in the complex against the developer or somebody else. You don't have to worry if the HOA is about, or the complex is about 70 or 80% tenant occupancy ratio. None of that will affect a HUD-owned product. HUD waives that requirement. You will close FHA financing if it's a HUD-owned property, okay? It's a huge, huge bonus. The IE, these properties are sold as is. So the IE finance type is a workaround. We're up to $10,000 plus 10%. The borrower can borrow an additional $10,000 to do lender required repairs, the relatively minor items after close of escrow. We'll talk more about it. And as I said, there is a owner occupant priority bidding period. There's also real low EMDs. The earnest money deposit on our properties in our area is going to be no more than $2,000. There is a Good Neighbor Next Door program. We'll talk about that. All homes are shown at HUDhomestore.gov. Don't go there yet. David will help you walk through that process in his portion. It's just that there's a lot of lookalike sites out there. We want to make sure you land on the right one, okay? There's a real quick response time for bids, typically within 24 hours of bidding deadline. And FHA 203K, I don't know how many of you have ever used this finance type, but we love it as local listing brokers. Why? Because we close deals. We don't have the fallout with 203Ks that we have with some of the other methods. We'll talk more about that. And if FHA financing is used, termite inspection and treatment is paid for by HUD. The FSM will only clear the active infestation. If there's a water leak that's probably causing some of the problem, they won't fix that, but they will spray for a clear infestation treatment. These are completely sealed bids, you guys. There's full bid transparency. None of us as local listing brokers have any idea of the quantity or quality of bids submitted on any property. We find out who the winning bidder is the same day the winning bidder finds out, okay? There's no cheating. There's no going under the table or around the system to have an unscrupulous listing broker use your information for their benefit. It's not going to happen on HUD homes. The integrity is impeccable. Okay, we'll talk about the special programs first. There's some properties that are eligible for special programs, and they're listed in what's called a lottery round for 7 days before they roll over to the general public. There's two types of lottery round eligible bidders. There's the GNND bidder, and then there's the HUD approved nonprofit or government agencies. If you need information on becoming a HUD approved nonprofit, that information is shown at HUD.gov. And the GNND eligibility will be indicated on the listing itself. The Good Neighbor Next Door program. It's designed to enhance communities, so they offer a discount on certain HUD homes to firefighters, EMTs, police officers, and teachers. If your buyer's name is pulled from the hat, or however they pull these names, they're going to be given the opportunity to close escrow at 50% off list price and only $100 down payment. It's a phenomenal deal. But the property, obviously, to even be a GNND property, it must be located in a designated revitalization area. The buyer must pre-agree to live in the property for at least three years, and neither the buyer nor spouse may have owned title to any property in the last 12 months before making their bid. And once they hit this program once, they can never do it again. Buyer nor spouse cannot ever have participated in the GNND program. It's once in a lifetime. Once you hit it, you're done. This is done a little bit different. The GNND program is a little different than your normal HUD bids. In normal HUD bids, you can submit at list price, above list price, or below list price. It's up to you and your buyer. On GNND, it's a little different. All bids are submitted at, if there's anybody there that's not muted, I'm hearing some little background chatter. Please mute your phone for right now, okay? So all bids are submitted the same way. They're all they're all submitted at 100% of list price. There's no credits that HUD will pay for. The EMDs equal to 1% of the list price, but no less than 500, no more than 2,000. So it's still going to be $2,000 in our area for the most part. You can use any kind of financing or cash on the transaction. FHA financing on GNND, you qualify for the full amount without a discount. You can finance into the mortgage any closing costs, prepaids, and real estate commission, because there's no real estate commission that's going to be paid by the seller. HUD will not pay a commission or closing costs on these GNND properties, but it should not be hard for you to enter into an agreement with your buyer to pay that. He can finance it, but it's got to be paid. It can be paid through escrow. It could be part of a loan, the loan on the property. It's just HUD is not going to participate in the payment of that commission. So get a commission, get a 3% commission on the full value, not the discounted value. That's my recommendation. Your buyer will be happy to do that. So bidding on HUD homes, we're going to jump into the process right now. Any broker who's registered can participate and get paid. So an aide is required to submit a bid. We'll show you how to do that in David's portion of the presentation. Nonprofits or government entities do not need a broker. GNND buyers and all others, owner occupants or investors, do need a licensed agent, a registered agent to submit a bid on their behalf. And David will be taking you to this portal in just a little bit, and we'll walk you through that. This is what your broker will need for registration for the NAID: IRS documentation or social security card, driver's license, state license, and a recent utility bill or bank statement. You fill out the full application, get it submitted with the most recent bill or bank statement, and you should be good to go. NAID numbers must be recertified annually, as I said before. It doesn't automatically review. Start the process, please, at least a month prior to the expiration date. If your NAID is expired, you're going to have to submit a package again back to HUD on HUD Home Store for a recertification process. Yeah, you'll have to get a new package submitted to Santa Ana. You won't be able to automatically renew on the HUD Home Store. If you do have any problems, any difficulties, there's a phone number here for the help desk for HUD Home Store, and there's an email for help at the help desk as well. So each selling broker and agent must register as a bidder, and we'll show you how to do that in David's portion. So you've got to have the valid NAID completed before the associate brokers or agents are able to register underneath the broker's NAID. So the broker cannot register with more than one NAID per state license. Brokers that have a license in multiple states can be linked to multiple NAIDs. The principal broker can modify their NAID via the NAID application portal in order to add additional offices or branches. Adding offices or branches is not a problem. And this is where you'll create a bidder amount. I'm not going to go into detail there because David covers that in his portion. Same with this, and this. David will open all these screens up online for you. He will also do some searching for properties. So how do I show a HUD home? All these properties are vacant. They're easy to show. They've got a standard super lockbox. If you ever find a key missing, please let us know. Just give the local listing broker a call. We'll run a key right out there. We don't want anything getting in the way of your purchaser showing that property, seeing that property and submitting a bid. These days, the old days, you could just send investors and buyers to these properties on their own. You cannot do that now. All purchasers must be accompanied by a state licensed broker or agent. You must be with them, please, when you show the property. So how do I show a home? All showings now are still subject to the state's COVID orders, recommendations, guidance. This is probably going to be part of our life for as long as we can see. It's just the new normal. Please also make sure you do have a pre-approval letter when you submit a bid, the pre-qualification letter or pre-approval letter. If it's a cash sale, please make sure you have proof of cash, and please make sure you've got that before you submit your bid. We want to make sure we have good, solid buyers. we want to make sure and ensure that the buyers are pre-approved with a reputable lender. If it's a cash buyer, please make sure that you do have that source of the funds. You can verify that. We also want you to be aware that there's any disclosures regarding the property will help you know what kind of financing to set up for your buyer. David will be able to pull up some disclosures. The PCR and the disclosure documents, they're all on the addendums tab, and they'll give you some clue as to what kind of financing will probably be needed to close escrow successfully on these properties. Only submit bids for buyers that have toured the property, please. There's no provision for subject tos. Okay, make sure the buyer has actually seen the property, walked through the property, and they're aware of the condition. So here's what needs to be on your pre-qualification or pre-approval letter. Make sure it's printed on your lender's letterhead. It's within 30 days old. The full buyer's name, the amount that they're pre-approved for, and the lender's contact information and their signature. Okay. If a buyer wants to cancel their bid for unsatisfactory inspection, no problem. Their EMD is at risk on HUD homes because it's not contingent on their inspection. They should also be aware that they will need to provide a copy of the inspection and circle all unsatisfactory items that were not previously disclosed. For owner occupants, you guys, we found that HUD is really pretty good with this. I don't know of, I can't say that I don't know of any exceptions where they've held the deposit, but there probably have been. But for the most part, as long as you follow these guidelines, circle any areas that was not previously disclosed, submit a request, a cancellation request, you will probably get your deposit back for owner occupants. And please note, repairs are not allowed, not if prior to close of escrow, even in the case of vandalism. If the buyer requests a credit for damage, they should be aware they're reviewed on a case-by-case basis and are not always granted. These properties are sold as is, and oftentimes as is changes while we're in escrow. If something does change and we can't work out a satisfactory credit, which the odds are we probably won't, you'll be given the chance to either close escrow as is or bust the deal. And then you can always come back and rebid, but then you're bidding against any other bids that may be submitted by competition. Overbidding on FHA financing continues to be an issue. Market's adjusting right now. There is some movement in the market for sure, but we encourage the buyers to submit their bid based on what they believe to be the appropriate market value. Be aware that the purchase price for the financial transaction must be supported by an as-is, FHA as-is appraised value. If it differs from standard real estate sales, and the buyer may renegotiate the purchase based on the appraised value. If a buyer wishes to renegotiate the purchase price on a HUD home, the contract must be canceled and the property then placed back on the market available to all bidders. So if your appraisal does not come in at what the price we're in escrow at, the buyer can either come up with the difference in cash or cancel. HUD will not drop that price. That's just the way it is with bidding a HUD home. So be real careful, especially in a market right now that's softening. You're going to, I think, begin to see lenders become more conservative on their appraisals. So just be cautious, be careful when you're making your bid. Submit bids that you're confident you will be able to get appraised, okay? Because HUD will not drop the price. Overbidding with conventional financing, the buyer's lender will order a new appraisal. However, the appraised value must meet the purchase price or the buyer will need to come up with the difference in cash between the appraised value and purchase price. Okay, this is the alphabet soup portion of all these. This is the government, HUD is the government entity, and they love using abbreviations and synonyms, and we're going to explain what some of these are. Some of these are really simple. F is for flood zone. HOA is homeowners association. There's an HOA involved. LBP means lead-based paint. And if the property was built before 1978, it could become involved or will be involved in some sort of lead-based paint addendum or evaluation. So how HUD is involved with the LBP. If the property was built before 78 and it's an owner occupant and involves FHA financing, the FSM will be notified to do a lead-based paint inspection. They'll fund up to $4,000 for remediation or stabilization. If it comes in, the bid comes in at $4,001, you'll have the right to either cancel the contract, at which your buyer will receive 100% of the earnest money back, or you can, the buyer can make the decision to change financing to 203K, conventional or streamlined, to handle those repair items. Okay. Please review the LBP addendum with the buyer before placing your bid. We don't want you to be surprised. So now we're going to go into the FHA financing codes. These apply to the properties, and there's 3 basic types of FHA financing codes. There's the IN. This is as good as it gets. It's fully insurable in its current as-is condition. No repairs were noted. Nothing was brought up by the appraiser or otherwise that would indicate we can't get financing on this property. There's the IE. This is where we see the bulk of the properties falling. They're insurable with escrow holdback. They're eligible for FHA 203B, but there's some relatively minor lender required repairs that are $10,000 or less. Then there's the UI. They're uninsurable. These properties need extensive repairs, and they're not eligible for FHA financing in their current as-is condition. This is where we'll see the burnouts, structurally damaged properties, mold-infested properties. Sometimes when a property gets to be around 100 years old, HUD finally says, you know what, we're done. We're going to classify this as UI. They just don't want to touch it. Now, some of these properties may qualify for 203K. UK is how you'll see it. But you'll see that on a case-by-case basis, and David can show you where to look for that when he pulls up the actual property search. The insurable with escrow holdback. This is the bulk of what we do, and it's the amount, $10,000 plus 10% if you need it, is added to the mortgage. The sales price remains the same. It needs to be a list of required repairs to come to this total for the repair work to be done after close of escrow. Licensed contractors must be used, and that's who determines the repair amounts. You've got to get bids through licensed contractors. No repairs are done prior to closing. Please, I can't emphasize that enough. I see it oftentimes where a well-intentioned selling agent will think they're doing everyone a great favor by replacing that water heater that came up missing. And we appreciate the heart, but it's going to bust your deal, and your buyer's not going to be happy with the result. If you have a problem or an issue and need help with a workaround, please contact the local listing broker who's involved. We'll help you. There's going to be a solution for almost everything that pops up, and this is one of them. Helping your lender walk through a IE type financing where the work is done after closing. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now and turn this over to Caroline. She's going to jump on for this next portion.
Thanks, Mike. And I think you need to stop sharing before I can share my screen.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Caroline Gim. I'm also a real estate broker. Mike, myself, and David, we all do these trainings once a month to agents so that you guys are aware of how HUD properties are treated a little bit differently than all the others that we're used to seeing in our marketplace. So when HUD has a property put on sale for the market, they do have different categories. So first of all, if the property is set aside for a special program, most specifically, it's going to be like the Good Neighbor Next Door program, or if they're going to set aside a property that's only available to HUD approved nonprofits or for the cities to buy, then they'll set those aside in the lottery period. Not all properties have a lottery period. And then once that lottery period is over, or if they're not going to do that at all, it just goes into general listings. So that should be available for anyone to submit an offer on. excuse me, once that property is listed for sale, Mike had mentioned that they do have special consideration for owner occupants. So during that exclusive bidding period, it's exclusive to owner occupant offers only. So that means that for the most part, for 30 days, it's only available for owner occupant buyers, which is great. And especially like lately when we have not enough inventory and buyers are struggling to find inventory, they hold things off just for owner occupants. However, if no one buys the property during the exclusive bidding period, then they say, okay, this is the extended bidding period. Now everybody can bid, investors included. And if your buyer is buying the house as a second home or for, not necessarily for profit, but if they're going to buy it maybe for their kids to move into, they are still considered an investor and they need to wait for that extended bidding period. If they're going to buy it for themselves to move in right away, and they're going to live there for at least 1 year, then they can buy during the exclusive bidding period. For the first few days on market, it doesn't matter if you submit the offer on day 1 or on day 3. They have a sealed bidding period. So, they're just like, we're going to put it on the market. It's going to sit for a couple days and we'll go over the time periods following this. And then on the morning of the end of that sealed bidding period, they open up all the offers. And if there's an acceptable offer to HUD, then they'll just go ahead and accept it and they'll move on. They don't do a counter offer. They're not going to send you a highest and best counter offer, nothing like that. It's just they open it up, and if it's acceptable, they say cool. They're not going to counter. So if you don't get an offer accepted and you see that it's still on the market, you can submit another offer for the same client for the next bidding period. And after that sealed bid period is over, they do check the offers every business day. So generally, I would say Monday through Friday, unless there's a holiday, a federal holiday. So the great thing about HUD is you submit the offer, you're doing it online, so it's very transparent. There's no question of, did the seller actually see my client's offer? And then the other good thing is that the response time, with the exception of the sealed bid period, you're going to know the next business day whether the offer was accepted or not accepted. And again, they're not going to counter in most cases. So if you see that your offer was not accepted, but it's still available, that just means try it again. Try it again with your client, maybe raise the offer a little bit. So as I mentioned, the lottery round is only for special properties and only for a specific amount of time. So if they decided to set a property aside for the lottery period, it's only going to be 7 days. You're not going to see the property on the MLS, but you might see it on HUD Home Store. So your clients may have seen it and be like, oh, I want to submit an offer. During that first 7 days, unless they are an eligible buyer, they're not going to be able to purchase that property. Okay. And good neighbor next door, everyone gets really excited about. So if they're like, oh, I want that house for 50% off, great. But they have to be eligible as a buyer, and that property also has to be in the lottery period. It can't be one or the other. Hey, I'm a police officer. I want to buy that house in Beverly Hills for 50% off. The property is not set aside. It's not going to happen. And after that time period expires, even if your buyer would be eligible, that's gone. So if, let's say a firefighter who lives in, Corona, California, there happens to be a property in Corona, California that's a lottery property. If that 7 days expires and then he says, hey, I want to buy that house now, can I still get the 50% off? Unfortunately not. Okay, so just be very mindful of the bidding periods that you see on HUD Home Store. When I talk about general market, that just means that anyone could submit theoretically a bid, but they're really going to give more weight to owner occupants. So for the first 30 days on market, if a property is insurable or insurable with just a small repair escrow, then for the first 30 days, it's only for owner occupants, of which the first 10 days is considered a sealed bid period. And then you get 20 days of daily bidding where they're going to review the offers every business day in the morning. And then on day 31, if no acceptable offer has come in, then they'll open it up to all bidders. Uninsured properties, so properties that are probably not financeable, they're still going to do a set aside period for owner occupants, just not as long. They don't think that they'll need 30 days for that. Really, it's going to be 5 days is both the sealed bid period and the owner occupant exclusive bidding period. All the bidders can come in on day 6 if no acceptable offer has been received by HUD. Okay, closing costs and commissions. Now, Mike mentioned, on a good neighbor next door specifically, HUD's not going to pay any closing costs. They're also not going to pay any commissions. That's because they're giving such a huge discount of 50% to your buyer, which is why you, as the buyer's agent, you can and you should talk to your client about getting paid commission from them directly. But in most cases, on a HUD transaction, they have very, very easy to follow guidelines. For your closing costs, if you ask for nothing, you get nothing automatically, okay? However, your buyer can ask for up to 3% towards the purchase price to go towards closing costs and closing agent fees, because on a HUD transaction, the buyer actually pays all of the closing fees with the exception of commission and grant deed recording and HOA doc prep and transfer. Everything else the buyer is going to pay. The escrow company, the buyer gets to pick, but they pay both sides. Title, buyer gets to pick the title company, but they pay both sides. So knowing that, you can talk to your lender and you can find out like, hey, how much is my buyer going to need for closing costs? And if they can give you a number, you can always ask HUD to credit that to your buyer at closing. But again, if you say nothing, it's automatically zero. HUD will go up to 3% of the purchase price. In terms of a real estate commission, with the exception of good neighbor next door, in which case no one gets any commission. But on a HUD transaction, commission is going to be starting at 6%, which is 3% for the listing agent, and then 3% for the buyer's agent, the selling agent. The only thing is, that's also something that's variable. You as the agent can choose to go a little bit lower on your commission, which sounds kind of crazy. Why would I want to pay, why would I want to get paid less? Because at the end of the day, what HUD is looking at is not how much your buyer is offering, but how much HUD is going to net. Okay, so for easy example, let's say $100,000 purchase price. If you ask for zero in closing costs, you get zero, but you can ask for up to 3% or $3,000. For the commission, let's say you don't touch it. It starts at 3% and 3%. You don't touch it, it's going to be 3,000 and 3,000. So the net to HUD at the end of the day is 100,000 minus 3,000 for closing costs, minus 3,000 for the listing agent commission, minus 3,000 for the selling agent commission. HUD's looking at really 91,000 at the end of the day. Okay, so you don't always want to ask for 3% towards closing costs if you don't need it. And for your commission, if you think the difference between getting your client's offer accepted and not accepted is maybe you change your commission from 3% to 2.8%. Okay. But that is just enough to tip the scales in your client's favor. You can do that. Okay. I mentioned this, the closing costs that are paid by HUD, very minimal. So it's going to be, prorations is definitely also going to be covered. So proration of property taxes, special assessments, things like that. The HOA transfer fee, I believe they also do the doc prep fee, but the lender cert, which has always been a buyer fee anyways, is going to be on the buyer. Anything else that you need from the condo or the HOA is going to be borne by the buyer, the cost is. Minimum commissions, we don't really deal with that a lot in California because our purchase prices are a bit higher, but should you be buying something for your client at $33,000, $500 or less, at least you're protected. HUD has a minimum commission of $1,000, okay? But otherwise, they start at 3% and it can go down to 0 for the selling broker commission. You are not able to touch the listing agent commission, and neither am I. Even if I represented the buyer, if I were the listing agent, that 3% is fixed. I can only adjust the selling agent side. Some other notes about bidding, because it's done online, you can do this 24/7. So you can submit an offer whenever you'd like. However, just know when the offers are going to be reviewed and when the deadlines are. Okay, so they're only going to be reviewed on Monday through Friday, a work day. That's not a holiday. So if you submit a bid on, let's say Friday, it's going to be reviewed on Monday unless, Monday is, let's say Memorial Day, in which case they'll review it on Tuesday. Plus, if you want your offer to be considered during that bid period, get your offer in before 11:59 p.m. Central Time, which is 9:59 p.m. here in California. Okay, so just make sure you get your offers in, I'd say 9:30 to be safe. But really you have up until about just before 10 o'clock our time. And then the next day, your offer will be considered and reviewed, and then you should have a response. And like I said, if your offer is not accepted, you can submit another bid for the same buyer I mean, same amount, but I doubt the result will be different. But you can submit an offer the next day for your buyer, maybe even $5 higher, $5 higher. There's no limit. And there's no prejudice as to, hey, this buyer submitted an offer 4 times already. Why do they keep trying? They don't care. They welcome and encourage it. Okay. And theoretically, there's no time preference in bidding. Oh, you know what? I'm sorry, I didn't change my screen. My screen was changing and yours was not. I apologize. Okay, so additional notes about bidding. Friday, Saturday, Sunday bids are considered the same. Holiday bids are grouped with the previous day's bids. So if you submit an offer on, 4th of July, it's going to be treated as if it was submitted with the 3rd of July bids. Okay, and then the winning bids are automatically selected by HUD system. So there's no place to put it anyways, but putting in like a love letter or talking about how much your buyers love that neighborhood and their family lives around there, it doesn't do any good. For HUD, it's just a numbers thing. There are few things that they do care about, whether your buyer is an owner occupant or not an owner occupant, they care about. If your buyer is using FHA financing or any other type of financing, they care about that. But otherwise, it's all pretty much set up by a computer. If A-Team, which is the asset management company for California, receives 2 acceptable bids that are the exact same amount, the bid that was the bid that will be selected is probably the one that's submitted earlier. So, they say there's no time preference, but at the same time, if 2 bids are the exact same, then they might go to the one that was submitted sooner. Okay. Because all the bids are submitted online, if you want to place a bid and then withdraw it or make any changes, you can totally do this. You just log onto your account at HUD Home Store and you can, make the changes. You can cancel, withdraw, modify your bid up until the time that HUD reviews. So let's say you submit an offer today and then tomorrow morning you find out that the offer was not accepted and they took someone else's. You can't go in and be like, oh, but we'll give you 10,000 more. At that point, it's too late. But if you do it before 10 p.m. today and you want to change your offer and raise it $10,000, for example, you can do that. And then tomorrow morning, they'll be reviewing it and they'll see the new offer as long as it's in before the deadline. Bid cancellations. So if you need to cancel your bid for any reason, do it sooner rather than later, no matter what. Okay. What we see between Mike, David, and myself is we see a lot of bids that get canceled, and they get canceled not because the buyer is deciding to do it. It's because HUD is blowing out the contract. And, the most common reasons that we see is, the contract package doesn't come in. The agents are not attending trainings. They have no clue what they're doing. So, they're sending over CAR forms and, coaching them. And we're saying, HUD doesn't use CAR forms. You only have 2 business days to get a contract package completed and stuff like that. Now, they now even do it for you. So based on what you've typed in, they send you the contract to sign. It's not that hard. And yet people still don't sign and return them. It's so weird. David's going to explain why. The most common reason for that is because when they're submitting the offer online, they do it incorrectly. So the contract package goes to somebody else. Another reason for bid cancellation is that the contract package is inaccurate or it has, mistakes on it. And again, now the policy is that they create the package and they send it to you for review. So number one, if you type in everything correctly to begin with, then the information should be accurate. But if you somehow mistake something or you put in a wrong number, you put in spell someone's name wrong, you still have a chance to correct it. But you have to do it in a timely manner. And if you don't do that, then they don't know whether or not they should move forward with this. So they're going to send you as the buyer's agent a contract package and you're going to review it and you're going to say, yes, good to go. Or you're going to say, no, let's fix this. If you say nothing, the contract blows out because you got to sign these after the buyer's agent says this is good to go. And occasionally the agent or the buyer rather, they cancel voluntarily, but that's mostly because they're not aware of how a HUD transaction works. So when they hear something like, what do you mean I have to pay all of the escrow fees? That's ridiculous. That's a HUD policy and it's not changing. It's just, their agent probably wasn't well trained in the HUD sales process. Checking your bid results, you can do this online. So on the bid deadline day, the following day, everything is going to be reviewed. And then your offer will be accepted, rejected, or counteroffered. And, like I said, very rarely do you see a counteroffer. Now that the market is changing, we might start to see them more. But for the most part, they just say, good to go or not good to go. If you're not good to go, check to see if it's off market. If it's still on market, that just means that, you probably didn't have that acceptable threshold for HUD. Try again. You're going to be notified by email if your bid is accepted, assuming that the offer was submitted correctly in HUD Home Store. And if you're not notified, check your junk mail, check your spam folder, or just log into your HUD Home Store account, and you will be able to pull up all of the offers that you had submitted, and you can see the status of those offers. And the local listing broker, they'll also be able to assist you. So we should get a copy of your notification. Doesn't always happen, but for the most part, yeah, you can also call the local listing broker and ask, like, hey, do you know if an offer was accepted? Hey, do you know if it was my client's? And you can find out that way as well. Okay, so counteroffers, like I said, it's very rare. Generally, I've seen counteroffers on properties that have been on the market for a while. And then at that point, then HUD gets a little bit anxious and they say, okay, hey, your net offer to HUD was, let's say, 300,000. We need the net offer to HUD to be 330. Do you think you can go for that? And they're just saying, can you get this, yes or no? They don't really want to counter to their counter. I mean, you can do it. You can always log on to HUD Home Store and submit an offer like it's brand new at 325 and see what happens. But their email or their counteroffer is generally yes or no. Earnest money deposits on a HUD transaction. So it depends on the sales price. So in our market, fairly certain that the sales price is going to be $250,000 and above, which means our earnest money deposit is $2,000. And it doesn't matter if your buyer is an owner occupant or an investor using, 100% financing or all cash. It's the same. $2,000 for a sales price of $250,000 and above. Occasionally, we might have something that's in the $50,000 to $250,000 range, and in that case, the EMD is $1,000. What you do need to know about the EMD on a HUD transaction is that the buyer needs to prepare a cashier's check or a postal money order. Okay, you're not allowed to say, "Oh, my buyer's going to wire funds as soon as we open escrow," or "Oh, my buyer has a personal check. Here you go." The only acceptable earnest money deposit and the only way HUD is going to sign the contract is if you deliver to the listing broker's office a copy of, or not a copy, but the original earnest money deposit, which is a cashier's check or a postal money order made out to the escrow company of their choosing. So if they're going to use, La-di-da escrow, make it out to La-di-da escrow, and then the amount is going to be dependent on the sales price. $2,000 might be $1,000 or might be $500, but in our market, I'm going to say $2,000 is safe. Please don't try to impress anybody by getting a higher earnest money deposit. If your buyer comes to my office and delivers an earnest money deposit for $10,000, that's great, but I actually have to send them away and I have to say, I'm sorry, but we can only take the one that's for the correct amount, which is $2,000 in this case. I see that this was drawn up at Bank of America. The nearest Bank of America is here. Please go get a new one. Okay. They don't get to say, oh, just hold on to that. We cannot accept it unless it's correct. And then, if anything happens, we can always give that back to your buyer and they should be able to go back to the same bank and put the money back into their account, no problem. I mentioned this. Now HUD has everything done online in terms of the contract preparation, which means e-signatures are possible, which is great. E-signatures have made everyone's life a lot easier. It makes it a lot faster to sign everything. It's all going to go through DocuSign. And A-Team Realty, the asset management company for California, they're the ones that will prepare the contract based on what you type into the offer as you're submitting it. Okay, so if you spell your buyer's name wrong, that's how it shows up on the contract. That's how it's going to show up on the grant deed, which is why you as the buyer's agent need to review the contract and say, hey, I must have made a mistake here. Can you please correct the spelling of my buyer's name? Or you talk to your buyer and you're like, hey, good luck, John. Your offer was accepted. And he's like, great. and maybe his real name, his legal name is something else. It's like William, but then he always goes by John. You need to figure out, how do you want your name to appear on the title for the property, and what do you have ID for? When you're submitting the offer, like I said, the buyer gets to select the escrow company and the title company. There is a way that you can find several companies that have already worked with HUD, and they have what's called a title ID. Okay, so on the screen here, I don't know if you can see where it says title ID FIDELI0190. This is their title ID. It's the unique identifier that they use with HUD. And so this company has worked with HUD before. They know how the procedures work. They know what they are allowed and not allowed to do with buyers' funds. If you want to get another escrow company involved that's not already approved with HUD, you can. An in-house escrow company is not allowed. So, if you own the brokerage and you also have an escrow division that is not under the Department of Corporations, but is part of your DRE license, you're not able to use that, unfortunately. So like I said, if the escrow company is not listed in the dropdown, you can continue typing and fill out all the fields with the company information, and then that will create a title ID for that closing agent. And then they will have to upload some additional documents in order to be approved by HUD to continue the transaction and complete it out. Bid acceptance. So the agent is going to be notified, which is you, by A-Team Realty that your client has been awarded the bid. But sometimes it goes to spam. And the most common problem is, David will show you, when people log in and they submit the offer, the way they enter the information for the agent, it ends up being more like you're notifying the manager for the office or for the broker of the office, which is not a problem if you only got 2 or 3 agents, but it is a problem in the big brokerages with like 200 agents. The office manager gets a notification like, hey, congratulations, your client's offer has been accepted. You have 2 days to get all this stuff done. And the manager has no idea like which of their agents submitted that offer. So that's neither here nor there, but please make sure that you're entering all the information correctly. I cannot stress that enough. Don't forget that it says the agent must submit the certified funds earnest money check. It's you, it's the buyer. We don't care. We don't care if you deliver it in person. We don't care if you mail it to us, as long as we get it in 2 business days. If you overnight it, but we have found that it works the best when someone comes and delivers it in person, so that if it needs to be corrected, they can go out and correct it that same day. Okay. Once we have the earnest money check, we actually make a copy, we scan it, we upload it into a system, and we let the A-Team Realty team know we've got the buyer's earnest money deposit, it's prepared correctly, and it's in our possession. Then and only then will the email link for the selling agent, no, I'm sorry, I don't think that's correct. I think that's when they will sign the contract on behalf of the seller. Okay, so you can probably get the contract going before that point, but the seller is not going to sign until we already have the earnest money deposit in. Okay, so in order for a contract to be sent out for DocuSign, the agent has to upload some items into their checklist for approval. Proof of funds. Oh, I guess you do need to have your EMD receipt. Okay, so you do need to have your EMD in before the contract package is prepared, but you got to have your buyer's proof of funds or your pre-qual letter, and call your lender and get it updated. So if their lender pre-approval letter says, hey, these people are good for $540,000 for a property in, who knows, like in Torrance, but then your HUD offer is on a property in Brea and it's $400,000, go ahead and get that adjusted so it's got all the final information. If your broker is going to have someone else signing on their behalf, because a lot of the signing on a HUD contract is not done by the agent, but more the broker or the manager, someone else in charge. If the broker is allowing someone else to sign on their behalf, there's going to be a form that needs to be filled out. And then when you have somebody drop off that earnest money deposit check, we will give you a receipt, and then you're going to have to give that confirmation page as part of the uploaded items to get your contract package prepared. After your contract is accepted, so this is on HUD Home Store, and David will show you this in more detail, but this is where you can see online if your offer was accepted or not. When you log on to HUD Home Store, you can see here it says home, review bids, accepted bids. You can click on that. Okay. You can also just go to review bids and it'll have a history of all of the bids you've ever submitted. So you can see that as well. So either one of these should work for you. You can also save some properties and then have the system email you when there's a change in status. You can also have some searches that are saved, and so can your buyer. They can set up saved searches so that you will be notified whenever something meets that criteria. So for example, I have one set up for myself. And my saved search is like, hey, anytime something is listed in Los Angeles County, Orange County, Riverside, or San Bernardino County, please let me know. So then I get an email saying like, hey, there's at least one property that matches your search criteria, and here's the information for it. Okay, so reviewing the contract package, once A-Team generates that e-signature envelope, the agent who placed the bid, which is going to be you representing the buyer, you're going to get an email via DocuSign to review the contract package, and you've got to give your okay. And then only after you give your okay is the contract package sent out to everybody for signature. Okay, you're not signing it at this time. You're just reviewing the package for accuracy. You're going to be pretty far down on the list of signing. Let me see if this makes sense. So first it's going to go to your broker or whoever your broker is designating to sign. Then it's going to go to the buyers, and then it's going to go to the escrow officer, and then it's going to go to A-Team Realty, who will sign on HUD's behalf. Okay. And don't try to like forward the signatures or forward the contract for signatures. It kind of throws things off. The system will do it automatically. So that's another reason why it's so important to type the information correctly when you enter it, because they're going to have a field that says, what is your buyer's email address? Put in their email address, double check it, triple check it. But it's not because HUD wants to reach out to your buyer directly, and it's not because the listing agent wants to reach out to your buyer directly. We are not there to like try to take your client. That is for the DocuSign. Okay, so just make sure it's accurate and it is for them. Don't put your own email address and think, oh, I'll just forward it to them and it'll be fine. It just mucks it up. Okay. Contract extension. Okay, so once the A-Team Realty or execution, once A-Team Realty has signed the contract and executed the file, then everybody who signed in that DocuSign signature package is going to get emailed a copy of the fully signed package. If there are any corrections to be made, please let them know as soon as possible, ideally 1 business day. Okay, if not, you risk the contract being canceled or awarded to the next buyer because we just don't know. Are you busy? Are you not responding? Is your client no longer interested? They'll just make assumptions. So really within 1 business day, please correct or approve the contract to go out to everybody. If you need to have any amendments, okay, contract revisions, the corrections, amendments, those can all be done by email now, okay, and they also don't have to be the original signature, so you can do another DocuSign or you can sign and scan, it's fine. All of these amendments are going to be found under the resources section on the ateamrealtyinc.com website. And just because the buyer says, hey, I need to add my son to this loan, or I need to remove someone from this transaction because they've got messed up credit. Just because the buyer signs it doesn't make it part of the contract. I mean, you know that. The contract has to be, or the amendment has to be approved in writing by both the seller and the buyer. Okay, and only A-Team is able to modify the actual terms of contract and process any changes to the contract. So, calling the HUD office in Washington, D.C. is not going to do you any good. And A-Team is going to need some information in order to approve these contract changes. It's not just a matter of, oh, we want to change this because, or hey, we want to change the price on this. That kind of stuff doesn't work. Please keep in mind that amendments take time. It could take, we're going to say up to 3 business days to process, and that's just to give, extra padding. But the whole point is, don't assume we're trying to get loan docs out today at 5 o'clock. It's now 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, I sent you that amendment. Why aren't you signing and returning it? Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on everyone else's part. So just be aware that amendments can take up to 72 hours to process. You certainly can call and follow up, make sure that it's received, but I would probably wait on pressing people and really pressuring them just because, you think, well, I did it, so you should respond so super quick. Once you're under contract, there's a few things that you should do. Number one, home inspections. Okay. HUD properties are all sold as is. So you're not going to be able to make changes, but it's still very, very highly recommended. You've got 15 days from the time that we have a fully executed contract to go out and do your inspections. And your buyers, I think in every case, they should do inspections, whether they're owner occupants or investors, they should still do it. Utilities at HUD homes are generally off. That's their rule across the country. They just say, if the house is vacant and it's owned by HUD, let's turn off the water, the gas, the electricity. No good comes out of having a property with, utilities that's sitting vacant. So you're going to need to contact what we call the FSM, or field service manager, to authorize the home inspection and get utilities turned on. The buyer is responsible for turning on utilities in the buyer's name for just enough time to complete their inspections and probably their appraisal as well, because most appraisers want to check the utilities. Then they have to remember to turn off the utilities as soon as the inspections are done. There are request forms to get these utilities turned on. You will probably get the information when you submit when your offer is accepted, and there's going to be links to let you know this is where you can find it. But you can also find it at hudhomestore.gov or on the agent resources page as well on the 18 website. So for the utility request form, there might be a deposit that's required. That's not refundable by HUD. In our area, we don't really worry so much about winterization, but if, let's say, a property is winterized and they need to turn on the water, well, now the property is no longer going to be winterized. If it needs to be re-winterized, then so be it, but the buyer is going to have to pay for that. Okay. And occasionally you might see that the FSM says you're not allowed to turn on utilities here. And that's generally for good reason. We've seen it where the pipes are not holding pressure, so there is a plumbing leak somewhere. The FSM doesn't repair that. They just identify it and they say, we have seen that, we put a air pressure thing up against the pipes. It's not holding pressure. We don't know what's causing it. We don't know where it is. We don't know the cost to cure. However, we're marking this as you cannot turn on water. If your buyer based on that goes, well, then I can't buy the house. Completely understandable. You submit a cancellation form and that's the reasoning and we're good. Okay. However, you will actually know ahead of time whether or not water can be turned on at a property. So termite letters. Buyers can do termite inspections at their own cost. Okay. The cool thing though is if you have an owner occupant buyer and the buyer is using FHA financing, so an owner occupant using FHA financing, HUD is actually automatically going to do a termite inspection, and then they're going to do chemical treatment. So whether it's spraying or fumigation, they'll do that. They're not going to do wood repair or replacement, but HUD is going to fund the treatment, at no cost to the buyer, and it does not affect the net offer to HUD if it's an FHA buyer. However, if let's say your buyer is a conventional buyer and they still want to do a termite inspection, feel free, you can do it. It's just at the buyer's cost. And then don't do any repairs until after closing in that case. Okay, as a reminder, of course, a HUD transaction is the same as any others in that the buyers are not allowed to move in or start making repairs before they own the property. Even if your lender says, hey, we need these repairs to be done in order to fund the loan, you need to talk to your lender and explain, this is a HUD transaction. Can we do an escrow holdback for the repairs? If not, you may need to find another lender that does allow you to do that. Closing protocol. Closing timelines are dependent on the buyer type and the buyer's financing type as well. So if you have an FHA or conventional loan, your buyer is going to have 45 days from contract acceptance to get their offer closed or the deal closed. If it's cash closing, you get 30 days. And if it's a 203K closing, you're going to get 60 days from the date of contract acceptance, which is when everybody signs. Extensions. So if we get close to that 30, 45, or 60-day mark, and we're not scheduled to close before that's up, even if it's by 1 or 2 days, I highly recommend that you get an extension. Okay, there's an extension addendum, and it's a request form that you got to explain why we're going to be delayed. And then in most cases, there's going to be a per diem, a fee to pay for a late closing. And all of the HUD per diems are bought in 15-day packages. So even if you think you need 1 day, you still pay for 15 days up front, and then anything that's not used will be refunded to your buyer at closing. Okay, so for example, again, it's based on the sales transaction amount. So we're going to be above 50,000, I'd say 99.9% of the time. If that's the case, the per diem fee is $25. $25 a day times 15 days is $375. You're going to get a cashier's check or a money order, a postal money order made out for $375, and it's payable to HUD. And then that's going to be required in order to get that extension granted. Please don't wait until like the 45th day to do it. You should know by day 40 or 41 if you're going to close on time, okay? Because it may take some time to get everything reviewed. The extensions, like I said, there's going to be some fees. It's got to be certified funds, which is a postal money order or a cashier's check. And everything has to go to A-Team, and they say 5 days prior to expiration. I mean, I've seen them be pretty generous with that, but that's a good rule of thumb. I'd say 5 days. Nothing wrong with that, because anything that they don't use is going to go back to your buyer anyways. Oh, please also include supporting documentation. So if it's being delayed because closing is delayed because the buyer's lender is still waiting on something, let us know. If it's going to be maybe the HOA hasn't provided their HOA docs yet, let them know. And then maybe call A-Team Realty and explain to them the situation. See if they'll give you a fee waiver. You know, hey, it's not our fault we can't close on time. It's because the HOA still hasn't sent us the documents we need. If you can explain that and get something in writing, then they'll very likely say, okay, well, then you don't need to send the money, just send the form over. Okay, and the supporting documentation as well. So again, the fee waivers are available if there's delays to closing caused by HUD, A-Team, or the field service management company, and the HOA as well. Owner occupants, they will generally grant you 1 free extension if it's a financing related delay, but after that, they're not going to. Okay. I mean, I guess if there's a delay for a 203K loan, they understand it may take a little bit longer, but really you've got to make sure you've got supporting documentation for that, because you know, it doesn't take that long these days. If you have to pay for like a rate lock, especially these days, and the delay was due to HUD, A-Team, the FSM, or the HOA, unfortunately, the buyer's not going to get reimbursed for the cost of any rate lock extensions. Pre-closing walkthrough before you close, before you send your final funds, maybe right after you sign your loan documents, please do a final walkthrough. Okay, we also do final walkthroughs for HUD, and we make sure that there's no change in property condition. So if the buyer made some improvements to the home because they needed to do that for financing, they will get caught at some point, and we have to report it. If we don't, we get in trouble. So same as, you know, us doing a pre-closing walkthrough to make sure the property condition hasn't changed, the buyer should do it as well. Even if they're buying it as is and they're like, oh, that house needs a lot of work, I already know. Fine, but go and make sure that it doesn't need more work than when we started the transaction. Okay, so please do that walkthrough. The lockbox should still be there, so I don't know why they're saying the lockbox is removed, but if it's not there, you know, call the listing broker and ask them for a key or, you know, access information. If you see any changes, let's say we've somehow missed like vandalism, maybe someone just broke in, let us know. They're probably gonna, you know, put a pause on the sale until we can get things figured out. But we should certainly not just close and then the buyer is going to have to be responsible for more damage, and you know, just because they think they have to close. The closing might be postponed to attend to some issues, and in that case, the extension fee should be waived. Post-closing, you know, now after we get the confirmation of recording, your buyer can turn on the utilities permanently. They can use and occupy the premises. The listing agent and the selling agent are going to coordinate to make sure that the buyer has access to get into their new home. Please do not give the keys from the lockbox to your buyer. Okay. I don't know about, you know, David and Mike, but like sometimes we don't want the buyer's agent even to have the key for a minute, because what ends up happening is there's the temptation for, here are the keys, change the locks when you have some time. And then who is responsible if anything happens to that house while the buyer is moving their stuff back and forth? We say, meet your buyer at their property, take the key out of the lockbox just to unlock the door, put the key back in the lockbox. And maybe as your post-closing gift, you can have a locksmith come and change out their locks. Or you can buy them some fancy door hardware from, Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, and then they can change the locks immediately. And then that's their house, those are their keys. You don't even know how many vendors have access to the same keys, and they might then let themselves in, and what's your buyer going to say? It is their responsibility ultimately to rekey the property as soon as they take possession. The best thing about HUD properties is that all agents, regardless of whether or not they're the listing agent, they are allowed to advertise these homes for sale. So you just need to know some guidelines. Actually, David, do you mind if I pass this over to you now? David Jervis? I don't know. He probably thinks I'm going to keep going until I see him again. All right. So any agent is allowed to advertise HUD homes for sale. Just make sure that you're advertising these homes in a professional, ethical, and positive manner. If you're going to refer to these properties as anything other than just for sale, say HUD homes or HUD owned or HUD acquired, nothing with a negative connotation. And then always include the Equal Housing Opportunity logo on any print advertising that you have, including your websites and your flyers. You can Google Equal Housing Opportunity logo and you can find them, a ton of them for free. If you know of anything to disclose, go ahead and disclose it. It's the best thing to do. I mean, you're not going to waste anyone else's time. And if a buyer is going to fall out because they can't get flood insurance, we would rather find that out sooner than later, right? If there's any regulations on how you can advertise a property in a community, go with the strictest of the regulations. So for example, if you're like, well, hey, the city says that we're not allowed to do real estate flyers. The city has said this is a waste of resources and it's causing litter. If the city says that, go with that. Okay. Whatever the strictest of the rules are, follow that. Because HUD is not going to protect you and say, well, we're HUD, so our agents are allowed to make paper flyers and litter the city because we're HUD. They're not going to do that. If you're showing a HUD home, there should be a super lockbox at every single HUD property. Use that super lockbox. It's the best way for us to keep track of who's been through the property and the timing and the order that they've been in the property. If you see any issues, let us know, because if you don't report it and the next agent does, we look at the super history and we assume the person who reported it probably didn't cause the problem, but the person right before them may have. Okay, so always put the key back. We occasionally do get calls from people like the lockbox is empty. And so that's a very quick fix. We download the super history and we say, hey, agent, can you please go out there and put the key back? Things that you're not allowed to do is, you can't advertise a house that's not available to the general public. Don't use anything that's going to confuse consumers. So don't use HUD or FHA logos and seals in your advertising. And never imply or state that the price of the property is anything other than what HUD has currently advertised. Now, if you want to coach your client and you want to let them know, yeah, you know what, you could probably submit an offer less than the asking price, that's fine. But don't advertise it for less than the asking price. And please don't give out the HUD keys at all. Things that you're not allowed to do. Don't do anything disparaging. So don't refer to the properties as distressed, repo, foreclosed, anything like that. Only one agent, although you're allowed to market these homes for sale, only one agent is going to be putting signage on the property, and only one agent is putting it in the MLS, and that's the assigned local listing broker. But there is still a lot of stuff you can do to advertise these homes for sale. If you see that someone else is not breaking, or someone else is breaking the rules, it's not on you to police this, okay? So just report it to the listing agent, and then we'll go out there and take a look. Where you can advertise, I mean, sky's the limit. I think that this is a very, very old and outdated advertisement. Just look at the PC, and then you don't see a whole lot of like newspapers and homes magazines around these days. Flyers, yeah, you still see a little bit of that. Billboards, you actually do see that. Seminars, I mean, that's a really smart way because you set yourself apart as some kind of an expert, to buyers or to, let's say, good neighbor next door. If you want to do seminars for firefighters and police officers on how they can get a 50% off home, do it. Social media, there's sky's the limit with social media, anything on the internet. You can do a just listed, just sold postcards, message boards. I mean, gosh, those are really not around these days, but there might be a Facebook group, or it might be like a neighborhood group for a certain area. You can get on there and let people know that a house is for sale. If you got an email distribution list, Craigslist is, I think Craigslist is still around. TV and radio ads. I know some people are doing, big radio spots, or podcasts, that's really popular too, and very low cost, but plenty of places that you can advertise these homes for sale. I'm actually going to pass this on to David Jervis. David, I'm going to stop doing my screen share so that you can hop on.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Mike. Let's see if I can figure this out without any technical difficulties or snafu. Share screen. Okay, does everybody see the screen that says HUD.gov/HUD homes?
Yes.
Resounding yes. Okay, this is www.hudhomestore.gov, G-O-V. It used to be .com and now it's .gov. This is the actual official site for HUD. Everything on a HUD property transpires here prior to the sale of the property. And like I said, it's easy to get there. Make sure you go to hudhomestore.gov. Nothing else. There are lots of lookalike sites that resemble this almost to a T that are not HUD, but are just simply there to get clients and people to put their information in. That way they can sell it to multiple real estate agents and to loan brokers and other various scammers. So it's always important to go www.hudhomestore.gov. And once you get to this, start with the most important things. Any agent that is registered with HUD can sell a HUD home store property. So the agent itself is not the person that is registered. It is the broker that is registered, and then the agent registers under the broker. So when you come to this site, if you're not already registered, you're going to click on this link here and click register as a bidder. Okay, in fact, let me just log out right now. Let's do it this way. I'll log in right here, bidder. Okay, you're going to select the NAID type. NAID, Mike mentioned earlier, stands for name and address ID. This is a number that's been issued to your broker by HUD. This is not something that's issued by the DRE or the California Association of Realtors or your board of realtors. It's issued by HUD to the broker. Most brokers have this. That number does not change. It has to be current. That's one thing. So once you know what your NAID number is, you would select selling or listing broker. In fact, let me back up just a little bit. Check principal broker registration. You can do that here. Check NAID status. You can do that here. Let me click this one real quick. No, that's not the one I'm looking for. Or this one. There's one of these where you can actually check it by a tax ID number. We'll find that in a moment. But if we're going to do this, we're going to select selling or listing broker and what your role is. Are you a broker, an associate broker, or are you a selling agent? So let's just assume that you're a selling agent right now. Your principal broker's NAID is going to go in this box. I'll just put mine in right now for giggles. Hold on. Let's see. Copy and paste your real estate license number. The state that you're licensed in and when it expires, 07/13/2023, and then you'll click add. And what will happen is based upon the broker's NAID number, if you're in a single office, it'll show up, or if you're in a multiple office franchise like myself, you'll have all the offices that are registered under the NAID pop up in this list. It's your job to pick the office that you actually work for, so the contracts and everything get routed properly. Let's see if I can find mine right here. Here we go, Newport Center Drive. Okay, so what you'll see is the office information pops up automatically. You'll then create your own username and your own password. It gives you the instructions here, and use whatever method you feel appropriate to remember that or to write it down and hide it in a safe place. Your security questions, because you're going to forget your password. You'll want to know what your security questions are, and your contact information. I can't stress the importance of having this done. A lot of times people would make offers and use their manager's contact information and log in. And if it were a big office like mine, the offer might get accepted and no one would know who did it because the manager never saw the offer. So always put your contact information in here. And then you click check the box and you'll get, one more confirmation the information is correct. Once you're in the system, you're always in the system. If you move companies, you can always go back and change this and put in the new broker's NAID number, and that will change your information over to the new broker. So once in, it's done. Again, the broker needs to also update this on an annual basis. In the old days, HUD did not update, maybe once every 5, 6, 7 years. Now it has to be a current NAID registration in order to submit an offer online to the HUD Home Store site. Okay, so we'll go right here. Just real quick, you can check this. I'll show you how to do that. So select the selling listing broker, paste, and it'll tell you like my NAID number is active. Okay, perfect. Okay, so everything here is done. We understand that part. Let's go back home. Okay, now back to the HUD Home Store site itself. Here's a few things that we'll look at on here. This is where the searching is done right here. This will give you just a quick at a glance look to see properties for purchase, blue with the lines off to the side. Everything that's dark blue right now has homes for sale in the United States and Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, American Samoa, Guam, and Alaska and Hawaii. No inventory in Hawaii, but there is some in Alaska. One real quick way to find out if there's any good neighbor next door is to click on the link here and watch the map change colors. And you'll see, I believe Connecticut is the only state that has a good neighbor next door. So nothing in California or any other 50 states or territories have good neighbor next door properties available. HUD approved nonprofits, you can click here and you'll see the same thing comes up, but they have their own access. HUD approved nonprofits have their own NAID number. They use public funds to purchase. It's not your, say, contractor with a conscience that might have been purchasing REO properties back in the 90s or in 2008, but they actually get early access to these properties, so we don't deal with those generally. And then government entities, that would have been your redevelopment agencies, which have been defunded for several years right now. So we don't really worry about those either. There are some caveats up here. Principal brokers and HUD approved nonprofits only. Click here to apply for a NAID, recertify or update a real estate license. So if you find out your manager or your broker that you're not updated, they can do that here. Typically, if there have been no changes to the brokerage information, that process takes about 20 minutes. If there have been changes, that can take up to 6 weeks to get processed. So please be aware of that. If for some reason the broker's registration is not valid, you would not be able to submit an offer. You would need to refer that to a broker that is valid and collect a referral fee from them. You would not be representing the client on that. Okay, so we'll go back home again for a second. This is where we recommend you do all the searching down here. California would be the state we're going to search in, although if you're licensed in other states, you can sell property in other states. I know many, many people now are running multi-state teams and doing it quite successfully. The HUD product is not a bad product to do that since it's all done online anyway. It's a very easy thing to do. I know Caroline mentioned seminars in the 90s and maybe up to 2008. There was a broker that I believe licensed in all 50 states that started junior college classes and created investor pools and investor clubs. And that's all they did was go state to state and buy pools of HUD homes individually and then run them as an investment group, and quite successful at it. In fact, I think he's still around today. But we'll search California, find out what we have available right now. And we can see that there's 20 listings. And this is actually quite astonishing. Big word, astonishing, because for the last year, there's not been more than 1, 2, 3, 4 listings at any given time. And almost all of them seem like we're outside of our area. Now, again, most of them are. You look at the counties where these are located, nowhere near Southern California. But for the first time in many, many, many months, we actually have San Diego County, Riverside County, Orange County, Riverside County, and even in Los Angeles County and Burbank. So all these properties are available, and these are things that you could market because they are local to you. You could market any of them if you wanted to, but these are close to you. So again, it's good to see that we have this inventory right now. Let's take a look at something right now and see. We'll look at one that has, that just came up on the market in Orange County. This belongs to Justin, who is not with us today. He is a son of the original king of REO, which was Mike Poitier, who you heard from earlier. And he picked up this one in Aliso Viejo in Orange County, California. So if we take a look at it, it has all the information on it, but let's go back real quick and take a look at some of the important parts. I meant to not skip over this. So let's see here. This is an exclusive listing. So we roll our mouse here. We know it's owner occupants, nonprofits, and government agencies. We now look at this and we see the bid opening date is on the 25th. So that is 6 days from today. They're going to be opening the bids on this property, and these bids will have to come from owner occupants because it's restricted for 30 days to owner occupants to bid on this property without investor competition. Always keep track of this number because you don't want to miss out on that first bidding window if you are representing an owner occupant on the property. Okay, you can get the information on here. You can email the information, map it, view the street view, but let's click on the hot link right now and see what it has to say. Tells us again the property address, the bedrooms and bath, the total rooms, the square footage, when it was built, what it is, number of stories, the HOA fees, if any. And here, revitalization area, no, opportunity zone, no, and a flood zone, no. Revitalization area is important to take note of. If you're looking for a good neighbor next door, part of the criteria is it has to be in a revitalization area. And it tells you the lot size, when it was listed, the listing period's exclusive, and it also tells you when does this period end? What's the deadline ending on this? So that is going to be 8/11. And I will check something here real quick. Okay, 8/11 falls on a Thursday. So on Thursday, 8/11, this property hasn't sold. It's going to roll over to investor bids. So that means that anybody that submits a bid, an owner occupant on Thursday night, by Friday morning, they'll be able to, that will also be open for investors. So that's something your buyer needs to be aware of. After that date change, if this were to fall on a weekend, for example, your buyer would want to submit 2 offers, one on Friday night and one on Saturday. That way they're in both bidder pools. So they're not only, they're not just, limited to that. Okay, so this is what we've got on the property. We know that it's listing date, the exclusive period, it ends when, list price. It is IE insured escrow, and it is eligible for 203K. Okay, IE means it's got some deficiencies that would prohibit it from having a normal FHA loan. And in a moment, we'll take a look at what those are. You'll find this on the addendums tab right here. You take a look at property disclosure or property condition report. That will tell you why this is IE. So let's take a look at the property disclosure. And when this pops up, I'll have to share a screen with you again. And there we go. Let's new share, stop share, new share. Okay, does everybody see the property disclosure statement in a PDF form?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Mike. Okay, this is going to come on every HUD listing. It'll tell you what HUD knows about the property. It gives you their boilerplate disclosures, tells you an HOA, gives you the phone number for the HOA, what the monthly dues are. And it says insurable with repair escrow less than 10,000. And down here, I'll typically tell you what those repairs are. In this case, for some reason, It's not telling us what these repairs are, just that they're less than $10,000. Okay, here we go. Possible ceiling and mold like substances on there. And this is highly unusual that it doesn't tell us what those
Yeah.
are. Typically it's going to.
Let me
This
give
is
you.
where you'd find it.
let
Mike,
me-
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm giving you some insight here. There's what looks to be a patched roof leak in the living room, just to the left of the fireplace. Yeah, so I don't know if that's a patched leak or if it's still leaking. So that's why there's a provision for IE. It does not look major, but if it exceeds $10,000 or $11,000, you'll have to roll over to 203K or bust the deal.
Correct. Okay, so this one's not too good because we don't see what's on there. The other tab that we could look at is on the property condition report, and that might tell us a little bit more. Can you see the property condition report on the screen now? Did that pop up?
Yes.
Okay. When you take a look at this, sometimes it'll show you there. This is the form that HUD gets when they acquire the property. This is what they see when the field service company comes out and takes a look at it. So in this case, the utilities were on. They were able to test the electrical, the air conditioning, the appliances. The water supply was on and that passed. The water heater didn't leak, so that passed. And the plumbing system passed. They said the roof passed. So it's interesting that all that passed, but they still have, it looks like, problems with inside the house. But let me go back and let's take another look here real quick and check something else and see maybe it will be some answers on the HUD home store site itself. Okay, we'll go back to property info real quick. Let's take a look at the pictures. Okay, we see it's got carpet. So that may be the only reason why they called it IE, is to address that issue of the mold-like substances on the ceiling or a possible roof leak. So what would happen on a situation like this is if you have an FHA appraisal on this property and your appraiser does not call that out, it may be possible to have this IE removed and go with a regular FHA loan. Not that it makes a lot of difference in terms of the interest rate or anything like that, but it's just not an overfund that the buyer is going to be, getting any money to do any repairs. They can always go for it and use that, but you may want to have that roof inspected to find out what's going on with it, to see if it is actually watertight and if there's going to be any issues on it. HUD may require that you do that. And if we'll take a look at this, this is a tile roof. So this could be something that runs into, money. We just don't know because we haven't seen the property. Okay, so those are things that you'll have to look out for on this. If you wanted to go out and knock doors on this property, since it's a relatively new listing, HUD makes that very, very easy. All you do is click here for print property flyer, and it's got all the information on it and a handy little spot to put a copy of your business card and run it down to Kinko's and make, 100 copies and go knock on doors in the neighborhood. Trust me, when you're knocking on doors, telling people about a government-owned home, they're a lot more interested in talking to you than if you're just out there handing out general information, because they do get a lot of that, especially in Orange County right now. A lot of people are door knocking again. But this has got all the basic information on it. Okay, so we'll go back to the HUD home store site. If you needed to find out who the agent was, you could find out right here on this tab. We know the addendums are there. The amenities, there's hardly ever anything in there. So most everything you're going to need is going to be on the property information tab. Okay, now let's say that you've shown the property and your buyer likes the property. This is where you're going to submit the offer right here. You're going to click on the tab that says submit offer, and you're going to have to do another login process again. Click as a selling broker, put your NAID number in and your license number. And then put I'm not a robot and verify the NAID. This is the bid submission form, its entirety right here. I think this is just an absolutely wonderful feature about buying HUD homes or working in the HUD home space is that to submit an offer on a HUD property, we don't have to fill out 172 pages of DocuSign boilerplate forms provided by California Association of Realtors. It's just all right here. We take a look, they're kind enough to tell us what the list price is. You can offer whatever you want, but a lot of times HUD does not come off this list price very much during the first 30 days of marketing. So let's say we'll just use it for right now, $950,000 being the asking price. And again, I don't know if the property is worth it or not. Like with any property you sell, always run your comps on it and see if it in fact is worth $950,000. HUD basically relies on the opinion of the appraiser, even though they do say they use an automatic valuation model and a broker's price opinion. Typically, this is going to be the number the appraiser gives them. Okay, on here, we can apply for any type of financing. You'll notice that there's nothing that says it's, a red star flashing says use this. So you can use FHA, you can use 203K, conventional. That would include VA or paying cash. So let's say we're going to do the repair escrow since it does show as an IE. Item 5 is a big one, and Caroline talked about this earlier about closing costs. This is the spot where you're going to ask for it. And we can't tell you over the years how many deals we've seen go south because the agent did not understand that HUD pays nothing if you don't ask for it. The closing statement would come out and it all of a sudden has the seller's escrow fees, both sides of the title insurance, all the taxes, everything on the buyer side. So if you want to avoid that, this is where you do it. HUD will pay up to 3% in buyer's closing costs. So that would be $28,500. Okay. Now, one real quick statement on this, and we just learned more about this morning in a meeting I was attending, is that you may want to ask for this much money as we are right now in a very high interest climate compared to where we were a year ago. It may be in your buyer's best interest to ask the seller to pay for a buy down or to use the closing costs. You could use this 3% to buy the interest rate down on a permanent buy down to where the property is more affordable, or maybe even a short-term buy down to take the rate from say 5.5 down to 3.5. HUD does not care what the closing costs are for. As long as they're going to the lender, that's all that matters. So if we take a look here, we've got 28.5 in closing costs. We've got the selling agent's commission, which is 3%, 28.5, and the listing agent's commission, which is 28.5. So this is the number that HUD looks at when they're going to make a decision on the initial acceptance of a bid. As Caroline said earlier, there's no love letter that's going to make a difference. All HUD cares about is the net. So that's what you need to work on. So if you think that the property may be worth closer to 975 or 985 or 990, then make your offer accordingly. Let's say here, 985. Okay, and now we've increased that net to HUD. Okay. And again, if you want to have a chance of getting this for your buyer and it looks like it's a hot property, I mean, I look at it this way. If you go to property and you see a line of agents there at their buyers waiting to get in, you might know that it's a really good deal. If it sits on the market and doesn't sell day after day after day, then you figure, you know what? They're not really in touch with the market. The market is dropping. Make a lower offer. But if it looks like it's a hot deal and you need to, adjust the price, then do so here. The other thing you can do, you can adjust your commission as a selling agent. And let's say you do it for $25,000. You can change that here. And that money goes to HUD. Always remember, this is not a Redfin giveaway. Whatever you reduce the commission by is not money going to your borrower. So if you've made a side agreement to give him back money, this is not where you do it. This is money going back to the seller to increase the net to the seller to induce them to take your offer. Okay. Any questions on that? Go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can speak up and Mike and Caroline will try to address them in the chat. Okay, so we'll go back here to the 950. And again, you'll see that it changes right there. Everything is done. And again, changing these things don't make any difference at all in terms of what HUD looks at. Okay, the purchaser, this is already grayed out because it's an exclusive. You don't have to worry about it. Always check this box, may hold offer for a backup. This is important if you are or your buyer is related to the broker, if they are the field service company, if they're related to HUD in any way, shape, or form, it has to be disclosed here. Check no, because they are very, very, very cognizant of conflict of interest. The selling broker agent submitting this is a purchaser. If you are, you have to check yes. And the reason this is that HUD no longer pays a commission to a broker buying for his own account. So check no if you're not. Now, this is important. At least one purchaser must be living in the property. Those not living in the property will not be required to sign the owner occupant addendum. And again, that's important because the buyer on an exclusive property has to live in the property for 12 months after close of escrow. If he's got people helping him to qualify, they do not have to sign that. They're not on the hook for that 1 year of owner occupancy. So here you can add another purchaser. I think, let's see, how many can you add? Up to 4. And then if you have to add more, you can do that by way of addendum after the property bid has been accepted. So what HUD is looking for is the buyer's social security, EIN, ID number, tax ID number, their first name, their last name, their address, city, state, zip code, email, and their phone number. We've always been more successful putting their cell phone number in this box because it seems to work better at DocuSign. So each buyer has to have that information. And then you're going to put down the company, the escrow company, or the closing company. HUD typically does not allow broker-owned escrows. They want to see a separately licensed and insured escrow company. A lot of people use title company escrows. But let's just say Chicago, for example, right here. Yeah, Chicago Title. And this is not an endorsement of Chicago Title, it's just what comes to mind. So if we put this down, we'll use the one on Brand Boulevard. Your escrow officer name, you'd put in there, their email, and then the officer's phone number. And down here, you want to make sure it's got the broker's name or the designated signer in your office. Okay, because you as an agent do not sign the contracts anymore. It's signed by the broker or the person he's designated authority to sign the contract. So once this is all filled out, you're going to click continue. You'll get a pop-up screen that says, here's the information you've submitted. Are you sure that this is right? And then you'll collect yes and go ahead and submit it. You'll get a bid confirmation, a PDF that you can print out, and it'll show who the buyer was, what you offered, what the closing costs were, and you can send that to your buyer and keep that for confirmation. Unless you're the winning bidder, that is the last thing you're probably going to get from HUD. If you're the winning bidder, you'll get an email, congratulations, you've been the winning bidder on this property. At that time, you'll be directed to go back to the HUD home store site and then put more information in. So we'll go back here to the home store site. And on this, I'm going to log in right now so you can see this. Accepted bids. You'll click the accepted bids tab if you have an accepted bid, and you're going to be uploading the buyer's proof of funds, the buyer's pre-qual. Make sure that pre-qual has the buyer's name, the property address, and the bid loan, the financing type that they're using. It has to match the bid. And that's going to be uploaded as well as the escrow information, the escrow officers or the escrow company's insurance, their E&O. HUD's going to ask for all that when they submit the bid. And once that's done, then it'll go through the DocuSign loop and the contracts will go out. But if we take a look again, here's the other things you're going to want to notice on the screen. Bidder functions, we'll go to this real quick. If you've submitted an offer and you want to change it, you can put the confirmation number that you got or the case number, and you're going to be able to see that bid that you made. It's this screen that you can edit it. You can change the price up, down. You can ask for closing costs, remove closing costs. You can change buyers. You put, new buyers in, new co-buyers in. If you put more than one buyer, at least one original buyer has to stay on the contract at all times. You can cancel your bid. A number of things you can do at this site. Okay. If you need to manage your profile as a bidder, we talked about that earlier, do that from here. You can change your security questions. You can also change which broker you work for. This is a good one, bid results. If you made an offer on a HUD property, you didn't get it. The only reason you didn't get it was A, you didn't offer enough money, or B, you asked for too much in closing costs. But HUD is, good enough to tell you what the accepted bid was. So for California, the most recent accepted bids, here's the net to HUD. If this were a property you had been following, you would have known what it was on the list price. You can extrapolate what the actual price was that they paid by doing this. So we also see here that these were all sold to owner occupants, and it tells you who the selling broker was. The reason I like this is that a lot of times the fallout rate is pretty high. When you had a lot of inventory, we were seeing a fallout rate of maybe 65% or 70%. So if the first offer that got accepted fell out, you could at least go back and tell your borrower, look, this is why you didn't get it. Remember, I told you to disregard what Zillow said? Here's what you need to pay. This is it in black and white, or actually blue, gray, and white. So you can show your buyer, this is what the property sold for, irrespective of what the experts might have said on some other site. So that's a good thing to know. And let's see if there's anything else on here. Property contacts, bid results, broker search. You can also set up your searches and things like that under bidder functions. Right here, save properties, save searches. Oh, one quick point. Anytime you submit an offer on a HUD property, if it does come back on the market, you're going to get notified via email that the property is coming back on the market, and to notify your buyers to see if they want to bid again. As Caroline mentioned, there are occasions, especially if the market changes as it is and inventory increases, there may be certain circumstances where you will get an email from HUD and from the asset management company saying, here's the net that we'd like to achieve. Is your buyer willing to come to that price? And over the years, I think I'd sold 5 of them like that. It doesn't happen very often. Typically, though, what HUD is going to do is if a deal falls out, they're going to pop it back up on the HUD home store site. Everybody that had an offer is going to get notified. And they'll have a chance to rebid on that particular piece of property. Okay, so I think we may have covered pretty much everything on here. I'm looking at, it looks like the comments were already responded to in the chat section. Are there any questions so far what was covered here on the actual site itself? You can unmute and speak up, or you can put something in the text. Either one is fine. Okay, and I've stopped the share on that screen right now. Didn't mean to, but I can go back and put it back up again. Okay, they can see the screen again. It's pretty quiet out there. Mike, does that look like everything's been covered as far as you can tell?
I think so. Do you guys have any questions? You feel free to unmute right now if you have any other questions. Here comes one.
Okay, let's see. The answer to that question is on an FHA transaction, you're going to be getting a statement that shows there was termite treatment only. They will not do a termite clearance on the property. If it's a conventional transaction, you would have to do the termite repairs after close of escrow, and you'd have to maybe do a set aside with your lender to handle that. HUD does not let anybody work on their properties other than their own approved vendors when they do the termite, when they do the lead-based paint. So I guess the answer to that is that you can request it, but they will not give that to you unless you are an FHA bidder. One thing too, if you happen to make an offer FHA and you switch it to conventional financing, if they've already done the termite treatment or the lead-based paint inspections and repairs, your buyer's going to have to pay for that. So always keep that in mind.
Any others?
Okay, well, it seems pretty quiet. You've been a really fun, thrill-packed audience to work with today. We thank you for being here, and good luck in selling HUD homes. And I'm going to go ahead and log out at this point.
Thank you guys for your time. I really do appreciate it. You can always call us if you have any other questions. You can find our information at HUDhomestore.gov.